Hi, today I'd like to talk about my experience of visiting Japan for the very first time in 2022. It was in the midst of COVID, and we had the quarantine in Tokyo. And actually, foreigners were not allowed to go, but my wife, being Japanese, and there was a family emergency, I got special permission from the embassy to enter the country. So when we landed on Haneda Airport, we were brought with a bus to a hotel close to Tokyo Disneyland. It's actually a very fancy hotel. I don't think we could afford to stay there if it wasn't for the mandatory quarantine. So the Japanese government covered everything, all the costs and even the food. And usually it's only supposed to be for Japanese citizens, but as I got special permission, I was also allowed to stay there. And I heard actually that the quarantine for families was much better than for single men, for example. So it was me, my wife, and my 1-year-old daughter at the time. And the hotel, I looked it up, and the hotel is called Tokyo Bay Xiaomi Prince Hotel. It's a very nice hotel. Obviously, we're not allowed to leave the room, but when I looked online, the common areas like the pool and the bar and the hotel, and I suppose the buffet are super nice. But anyway, the hotel room was relatively big. Well, as far as hotel rooms go, it's not like a super small APA hotel where you can only fit the bed. Aside from the bed, there was a little bit of space to move around, so we could play with Marie, who at the time was 1 year old. So I put her, for example, in the laundry basket, and then we'd run around the room. I don't remember how many days it was, maybe 5 days, which is quite long with a little baby in a small room. But at least the food was very good. Good Japanese food in a good hotel. And actually my wife had to work remotely for her job, so she would be working in the room or sometimes in the bathroom while I was playing with Marie. And so that quarantine was okay. We went through it, everything went well, and then we were released, and we went to a hotel. We got ourselves, I think, a little APA hotel or something similar, something cheap. And that night I remember my wife actually was sitting on the toilet with the toilet closed on with her laptop trying to work, because she had to work Belgian hours, which means nighttime in Japan. And me and Marie were trying to sleep on the bed, but the APA hotel rooms are so small that yeah, that's the only way we could make it work. Her working on the toilet and we sleeping in the dark room. And then the next day, because actually we had to sign an agreement that we were not allowed to take the public transport at the time. So my brother-in-law, who lived in Tokyo, he rented a car, and we drove to our final destination, which is Okazaki in Aichi Prefecture, which, if I remember correctly, is an 8-hour drive from Tokyo, which also with Marie, a small child, was a nice adventure. And we did some rest stops, and already I noticed how great the Japanese toilets are, even in a public space like a rest area, like a rest stop. They were ventilated just naturally, so the wind kind of blew through it, but the toilet seats were heated. You had like the typical washlet, like a bidet. And I noticed also, because once you have small children, you're always on the lookout for changing areas or how to manage with a small child. So while you're sitting on the toilet, there's actually this kind of baby holder, so you don't need to use your hands to hold the baby, and you don't need to put your baby on the dirty, relatively dirty floor. So you can actually put them and fixate them on the wall in this baby holder, which was great. I never saw this in Belgium. So there are specific things in Japan and about Japanese toilets that we don't have in Belgium. Like Japanese toilets are one of the top 3 things about Japan that I really like. But in private homes, they're great. In hotel rooms, they're great. But even the public toilets are great, and they're plentiful. Like even in the supermarket, you got toilets. Everywhere you go, you got toilets, and they're clean. Whereas in Belgium, it's kind of like a toilet desert. In the supermarket, there's no toilet. In many places, there's no toilet, or you have to pay for the toilet, which is very different in Japan. But already, I'm talking about the toilets, which I love, which we're gonna keep as a topic for later on. So what was I gonna say? So actually, this trip lasted for 2 months. So we stayed in Okazaki most of the time after the quarantine for 2 months at my mother-in-law, but only one time we took a outing. We did an outing or 4-day trip to Kyoto, which was really great. So what are some of the things that I noticed being dropped into Japan, coming from Europe or Belgium specifically? One of the things I noticed staying there for 2 months is that they really have a lack of zoning, which was surprising to me, because you always think of Japan as a really orderly country, like really organized and structured. But when it comes to building, or like the layout of the buildings and where to build certain things, it's really like a mix of everything. So in Belgium, you got like an industrial zone, a residential zone, maybe a shopping zone, and you're not allowed to mix one with the other. And then even within the zones, you really have to get a permit, and you have to follow certain rules whenever you want to even build on your own land. But so in Japan, there's no real zoning. You can have a factory next to a house, next to a shopping mall, and then sometimes you get these weird situations that there's like seemingly a house that was there before, I suppose, kind of in the middle of the parking lot of a big shopping mall. So zoning is kind of non-existent, and it's all like a big mishmash of different kind of buildings with different kind of purposes. And then even when you're in a fairly residential area, all the houses are in have a different layout. So in Belgium, the driveways all have to kind of point in the same direction, and the houses, the facades have to be on the same level, and let's say that from the sidewalk, the house has to be 5 meters, and all the houses have to keep to this rule, otherwise it's one big mess, and everyone just does whatever they want. And then even on the backside, you also got certain rules, and when going up, like you cannot build like a skyscraper in the middle of a residential area, for example. So there's many rules and many permits you need to get to change anything to your own building, and then let alone if it's like a historically protected building with a nice facade, you can do even less things to your own building. But so in Japan, none of these rules apply. You can just buy a piece of land, and there's very limited rules that you have to keep certain space between you and your neighbor. But any direction you want to build, the driveway can be diagonally, vertically, well, not, I guess, I suppose not vertically, but can be pointing in any direction, different from your neighbor. So all the houses have a kind of a messy feel to them, like the neighborhood as a whole. None of it is has any conformity, one building to another. So that also surprised me. So it's clean, like Japan is very known for its cleanliness, but it's messy, looks messy, and there's no, like, compared to Europe, there's no old buildings. It has a very American feel to it because all the houses are also not built of brick as you would in or concrete as you would in Europe or in Belgium. It's all kind of these plastic looking materials, and that has to do obviously with the earthquake resistant building codes. So in that respect they have many rules to make buildings earthquake resistant, and that supposes certain materials. So brick is very unsafe obviously, and they used to use a lot of wood, which would be prone to fire or burning, but now they're using many of these artificial materials, and it can look nice, but yeah, often it has this very, yeah, to me as being used to Europe and Belgian buildings can have sometimes very plasticky feel and not nice looking, just looks cheap basically. But that obviously has nothing to do with the country as a whole or the people, or it's just the first impressions of your environment. And then also living in one of those buildings, I noticed even though the climate is quite cold in winter, just like Belgium, there's no central heating. So even inside you need to wear all the time kind of fairly thick clothes, long sleeves, long pants legs, and you use kind of electric heaters, but they're very local, and if you use them to heat the whole building, it's very expensive. So yeah, I'm surprised they didn't have central heating except for Hokkaido, which is, yeah, if you don't have central heating in Hokkaido, you basically die. So it's not common to have central heating, and also because the buildings are made to resist earthquakes and made of these plasticky looking materials or artificial materials, they're not insulated very well, so sometimes it feels like the wind is just blowing through your window or whatever, while in Europe there's a move towards insulating more and more, and the building codes are really moving towards making your building energy neutral, which means to save electricity and to not waste any energy, while in Japan that's not even a consideration. It's just no insulation, very thick walls, very thin walls. You can hear anything that your neighbor does. The wind, you can hear the wind. It almost feels, also because of the lack of central heating, always feels sometimes that you're just standing outside because it's so cold. And to mitigate this coldness, they have the kotatsu, which is this table with a heating element underneath and then a blanket to cover your legs. So then you're sitting there on the floor with your legs under a hot table, but your body is still cold, which supposedly many foreigners kind of like this kotatsu concept, but I don't really like it. It's also in the particular house where I was staying, they had very few chairs. So for 2 months, I was basically sitting on the floor, and Japanese people are very used to it. They're very agile and very flexible, but I'm not flexible at all, and it was so uncomfortable for me that my legs hurt constantly from standing up and sitting down and sitting uncomfortably, and even affected my mood at certain points. Like, oh, I'm so tired of sitting on the floor, and my butt hurts, and my legs hurt and everything. But after a while you get used to it. But in the beginning I really was not pleased. So it was cold, my legs hurt, I'm sitting on the floor. So it was definitely an adjustment period. And so very American feel. No old buildings compared to Europe, where many buildings are very old, and all the old buildings are also protected not to be changed often. And we really love our old buildings, so we rather renovate an old building to make it look nice inside and keep the old look. Whereas in Japan, they really love new. They're really obsessed with new, and real estate is not looked at as an investment. It's just like a thing you use, and then you just destroy it, and then you build a new building. It's not something to invest in and give to your children, or it's a different perspective on real estate. But it also has certain advantages because they don't really have this housing crisis that many countries in Europe have, where people cannot afford to buy a house anymore. This kind of outlook on real estate also keeps it affordable, and the big lack of rules, so no installation requirements, no permits needed, no zoning, also gives you lots of flexibility and freedom to build wherever you want and build extra housing. Whereas in Europe it's very difficult. You have to get permits, you have to meet certain standards all the time, and it gets very expensive, and then people cannot afford it anymore, and even rent goes up because, and so on and so on. So there's big housing crisis in Europe, which doesn't exist in Japan. But of course you got the issue of not having any privacy because your neighbor can hear you, and living quarters are usually very small, definitely in big cities like Tokyo. But in Okazaki, which is a relatively small town, that the size of the house was not too small. So what else? What are the kind of societal things that I liked living there for 2 months? So we didn't really live the tourist life. We really had like a local life almost. What I really liked was like the concept of the Genkikan. It's like a community center where you got like a daycare, which even we could use sometimes for like a few hours to leave Marie and get like a breather to recover. Which has a little cafe, which has a little library, which has a swimming pool. Many also other kind of social functions. A really great place to meet people. I really love that, and also that the libraries, they kind of work together. So if you borrow a book in the big library in the town center, you can actually return it in one of those kind of little libraries in your community center, and they will automatically go back to the big library, which also doesn't exist in Brussels, for example. Of course, typically foreigners love the convenience stores, definitely, because in Belgium we don't really have it. The closest thing we have is like a Carrefour Express, which is just like a little supermarket. You cannot really, there's no toilet there, there's no hot food, there's no kettle to prepare noodles, you cannot get like fried chicken or whatever. There's not really a seating corner. You cannot print anything at a Carrefour Express. So basically at the convenience you can survive there, you can just live there. And often when I got tired of being in the house, or I wanted some time to work on my laptop, I often went to the convenience, got some food, got some onigiri, or got some sandwiches, and a coffee. Like I love the Family Mart jingle. After a while, kind of you get used to the sound, and then the lady yelling "Irashaimase," and it's just a nice environment if it's exotic to you, I suppose. And the seating corner in this particular Family Mart was very nice, so you could overlook the parking lot and see people come and go. But later I learned that you're not supposed to stay there for maybe 2 hours. You're just supposed to eat there and then leave. But I guess because I'm a foreigner, maybe people didn't dare or didn't try to explain to me I'm not supposed to be there for such a long time. And at the time yeah, still my Japanese is very basic, but at the time was even more basic. So yeah, if they were to explain it to me, I wouldn't have understood, and then they would have lost face, so to speak, and have felt awkward. So I think they just prefer to avoid any interaction with me. What else did I write? Yeah, of course. So on the trip to Kyoto, when we actually left Okazaki for once, there's a couple of things that struck me. Of course, the trains are very nice, and we tried the Shinkansen, and we tried the metro or the subway in Kyoto. And actually, our hotel in Kyoto was right like above or in the big Kyoto station, which with children is great. Yeah, we just arrived with our luggage and with Marie in the stroller, and then we went up with the elevator, because you're not supposed to take the conveyor belt or the escalators with your stroller. That's kind of like a social rule. Don't take the escalator with a stroller. So, but fortunately, there's always lifts available, because I noticed all over, at least Kyoto, accessibility for wheelchairs and strollers is very good. So there's always elevators, and sometimes you notice that in like a metro station they build an extra floor on it just for the elevator, so it was added later. I think it's for the tourists maybe, or just for the local population, but accessibility is very good. And also for tourist attractions, they usually make sure people can go there with a stroller or a wheelchair, which is great. But so I really love that station of Kyoto. It's almost like an airport, which we have in Brussels. Brussels South station is kind of like this airport-like train station, but it's very dirty and yeah, sometimes unsafe. Yeah, so it doesn't have a great reputation, Brussels Midi station or Brussels South station, but Japan being Japan was very clean, and you just felt like you're kind of in a shopping mall, a very clean shopping mall, and then there's this great kind of restaurant alley within the station where we also had our first dinner when we arrived, and we ate unagi, the great Japanese eel, which is very different from Belgian eel. Belgian eel is not that tasty and difficult to eat, but Japanese eel is very, very good. So I really recommend with small children, or even without small children, the hotel in in Kyoto Station. I really loved it, and you're always central. So if you want to visit other things over the next few days of your stay, that hotel was great. And yeah, service obviously was good, and the hotel room was clean, and it was just there was nothing to criticize or comment about in a negative way. So what else did I write down? Accessibility was great. Station of Kyoto was great. Trains were great. Yeah, so just also in general, within the metro or the subway or the trains, you're not supposed to talk, and you're also not supposed to make phone calls, so you kind of get used to this library-esque environment, very quiet, very nice. And the other social rules are you're not supposed to walk and eat, or you're not supposed to smoke and walk. So there's designated areas for smoking, and smoking is not banned in all restaurants yet. So when you choose a restaurant, you should kind of check if they allow smokers. But I think nowadays most restaurants they ban smoking. So, but yeah, one time we wanted to go in a restaurant and it was full of smoke. So with our baby, we obviously didn't go in. So I really like that rule that you cannot walk and eat or smoke and walk. I guess it limits your freedom, but also then when I was back in Belgium, I noticed people are smoking, the smoke is in my face, they're walking on the street, and really kind of like a reverse culture shock. And then obviously they throw not everyone, but they throw the ash on the floor, and maybe even the cigarette on the floor. And even though there's maybe more trash cans on the street in Belgium, Brussels is not known to be super clean, so there's always a little bit of garbage, which in Japan was not the case, even though after a terrorist attack in the 90s, like a sarin attack in the Tokyo metro, they banned all the trash cans. So there's almost no trash cans. So even, also if you want to get rid of some trash, you have to find a conveni, which they do have trash cans. But fortunately there's a conveni like every 500 meters, so you just keep your trash, and then once you see a conveni, you get rid of your trash, or you just keep it in your backpack and take it home. Oh, where's my paper? Did the fan blow it away? Yeah, maybe. In Kyoto, we also visited temples like the Misudera temple, the one on the hill, and then the golden one. Should have looked up the name of the temple before making this video, but that was very nice. I think we visited Kyoto in Golden Week, so there was lots of domestic tourists. So not even like the foreign tourists didn't even arrive yet, or get there yet. Like now it's overrun by tourists because of the cheap yen. So Kyoto is probably like even though it looks very nice, it's probably like a hellscape. You can barely move. You're just queuing all the time. But so we had kind of the same issue, even though it was only Japanese tourists, because it was Golden Week, and then all Japanese people basically do domestic tourism. They don't really have long holidays in Japan, so they cannot often go on a overseas trip, but they do a lot of domestic tourism and go visit their own temples. And so I was the only foreigner, but we were still squeezed by all the other Japanese people. So yeah, what else did I want to say? I think I kind of covered everything I want to say. And we were also there to experience the Sakura festival, which is really cool, because then like we have the weather forecast on the TV, and it tells you like next week is gonna rain, or every day it's different weather. But they actually I think it's included in the news or included in the weather forecast. They will say like during the Sakura season, this week if you want to see Sakura, you go to Tokyo. Or this week you want to see Sakura, it's best to go to Nagoya. So every city has a slightly different time when the cherry blossoms bloom, and it's actually mentioned in the news. So it's very important. Like it's a big national event. And even in Okazaki, there was like a river or a channel, and next to the channel was full of cherry blossom trees. And I walked there many times before, just taking Maria outside. But then 2 weeks within my 2 months that I stayed there, suddenly these cherry blossom trees, they blossomed. And then it was overrun by people like super nicely dressed in a suit or dress, with the kids taking family pictures. And you could barely take a picture without anyone else in your shot. But clearly the atmosphere was very nice, and people were very happy having picnics there, trying to take the best shot. But then suddenly, I didn't expect it to be so short-lived, but then suddenly all the blossoms were gone, and then nobody was there anymore at the river. So I kept doing my daily walk, or my weekly walk, to just get Marie to sleep or make her happy, because we cannot stay inside all day. But yeah, suddenly no more people at the river. And another thing that was great in Okazaki is that they had this free inside play areas for little kids, also provided by the municipality or the town. So in the Genkikan there was one, but yeah, there were, like my wife Harumi, she looked up all the different areas or the different indoor play areas in the vicinity, and then as we had a car, fortunately I could drive there and like give her different environments, because in the house obviously we didn't have any toys because we couldn't take them apart from like she has some boxes to play, but after a while. So we went to the library a lot, we went to these indoor play areas a lot, which were very nice. We also went to Nagoya one time. We had tonkatsu. Yeah, it was what else? No, I think I covered most things. But yeah, so I was already kind of used to Japanese people, and yeah, having met my wife 2 years before, or even more. I knew my wife maybe 3 years, so I got used to many Japanese habits. I met many of her Japanese colleagues, and I tried to already learn some Japanese, even though it was not very, like my Japanese was very undeveloped yet. Maybe now it will be better. I can kind of introduce myself and say basic things. And we're planning to go again next year in 2025, like 2025. So I hope, or I plan to improve my Japanese a lot by that time. It's kind of a nice goal. Go to Japan again for 4 weeks and be able to communicate with the locals. Yeah, because people are very friendly and they want to talk and they're kind of curious about you. But once they notice you don't really speak Japanese, it's very hard. We also one time visited like a Harley Davidson dealership there, which was cool, but would have been fun to talk to them. Or yeah, another thing I would like to do, like for example, I didn't try any. Yeah, we tried to unagi, we did tonkatsu, but I didn't even try conveyor belt sushi or some typical things. So this time when I go back, I want to make a list of things that I want to do. I want to try, like also for Belgians to have your driving license converted. It's not that easy. You cannot use an international license when you're from Belgium. You have to have your Belgian license translated by a designated Japanese agency, like an automobile agency, like the National Association for Driver Safety or whatever. And yeah, so you have to apply for it online, but you have to be within Japan itself, so you have to have family to do it for you, and then you have to pay in a certain convoluted way, which is also not easy. Like online things are very convoluted sometimes, not very user friendly. They're a little bit behind in that way, like administratively and doing things online. So that was difficult, but fortunately my brother-in-law helped me, and so I had my translation of my license, which allowed me to drive there. So yeah, I was about to say that it would be fun to maybe rent a motorcycle in Japan and also do some little trips there, but maybe that's not for next time. Maybe that's for next time. So these are my impressions of visiting Japan for the first time. And maybe it will be fun to make some videos now in preparation of my next trip. And maybe make some videos in Japanese as an exercise and as a preparation to just simulate certain situations, like introducing myself or going to the convenience, or maybe like a fun video idea. So if I do it, you'll see it uploaded. So thank you for listening, and see you next time.